So I think it's safe to say that in the world of employer branding, creating content is absolutely key. But how on earth do you get started, or how on earth do you keep it going? So when I saw Ben's talk on stage, I just had to get him in the armchair and chat about this. So how you doing, Ben?
Thank you so much, Chris.
Good. Thanks for joining.
Absolutely.
So tell us about what was your talk, and why did you want to give that talk to everybody yesterday?
So, I've been giving a couple of talks in the past few years, and every time I've either tried to be strategic or inspirational, always with some practicality to it, but there was always a point of here's a blueprint, here's a strategy, here's an inspiration that you can have. And what I've noticed is it's quite rare for people to then take action on those kind of talks. I think they're good and they're necessary, but I wanted to do something different for this one. And I wanted to be as concrete as possible and to give people lots of ideas and to not put too much pressure that all of them should be implemented, because not all of them should be implemented depending on what they need. But at least if they could take one home, that would be a winning talk in my book.
I think that's really important, isn't it? Because it's easy to go to events like this and then you're kind of told to reach the Everest. You need to do this, especially when you go to hear about established companies talking about employer branding, like it's World Employer Branding Day in Amsterdam. You'll have some big organizations going, we do this and it took us months and years to build. And it's actually, where on earth do I start? And I'm particularly passionate, I've said this on my podcast before, is that just get started, and actually you can do things and be doing employer branding.
You see companies spending I don't even want to say numbers at this point, but obscene amount of money on EVPs and obscene amount of time to build this EVP for it to often be irrelevant by the time it's done. And so I've always preached this concept of building your EVP in public.
Yes.
So the same way that some companies build their EVP in public, some companies build their companies in public, you can kind of build your EVP in public in the sense that all the discoveries and all the work you're doing, all these employee interviews that you're doing to understand the organization more, you can already use this piece of content, part of them at least, for external material.
Yes, true. And actually it's I think what you said about, and we'll talk about the content side of things, but one of the things you up on the stage on the slides early on was 30% of your time should be spent on content, and the remainder should be on distribution.
On the content creation.
So content creation,
and this is a top of mind kind of number. It's not you have to follow 30% exactly, but it's a good signal. It's a good way to remember that the most important part of content is the distribution play, not as much the creation play. And I think I see it in the feedback that I get when we produce videos. It's this corner is not the perfect color, or this tiny thing is not the right grading, or the right this or that. And rarely do the clients fully understand that the play is how do you distribute that content, who is going to be watching that content, which format should that content be created in so that it's distributed in the right place towards the right candidates. So distribution is it's basically the undertapped. When you're gonna compete on creation, you have to be innovative, you have to be authentic. There's it's hard to compete on the creation. You have to be really, really good. The market of how well people distribute their content is where the opportunity lies.
It's true.
No one puts their content on in an email. Let's say you do a video of a manager. Very rarely will you see that video being distributed between the first and the second interview. Very rarely will you see the video being distributed post the first interview with the TA. It's there's so many places in the candidate journey that you can distribute your content.
Yes.
That is completely undertapped at the moment.
Absolutely. And I think I've seen it before where I like your split, I like the percentage thing, because actually it's whatever that percentage is, it's saying that actually, yes, you will be close to creating content, you know your content, and you're proud of your content, but your audience doesn't care about their content until they care about your content. And there's a thing about, earlier on this morning, talking about brand consistency, and often consistency is often talked about consistent tone of voice. Yes, that's important, but that consistency in terms of turning up all the time is really important, and the distribution is really important part of that.
I mean, the consistency on turning up is important, but the consistency of turning up at the right place to the right audience is even more important, meaning that some of the talent pool that you're trying to reach are going to be more receptive to a custom short video made with your phone on the go by the talent acquisition, going like, hey, this is the reason why I'm reaching out, and I'm sending you this video because we have a couple of openings here, would love to get the conversation going. Some of them might be more attracted to something a bit grand and a little bit, so it's like figuring out what are the candidates, where are the candidates spending their time, and getting to know them. And actually, if I may say, in the past few years, every time I would say this, like, figure out where your candidates are spending time, and people are like, how the hell are you supposed to do that? And one of the things that is really useful and is to use AI for this. Like, a lot of people use AI to generate the content. I very rarely use AI to generate any form of content, but I use AI as a research tool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like,
right.
Okay, here is like a Java developer. So you build a talent profile within AI, you ask them questions about it. What kind of community do they belong to? What sort of like, how do they think? And if you use AI to do your research, you might get way more insight to then build relevant content towards them.
It's true, because actually then if you are informing AI about what you want to do, you've got solid basis of understanding.
AI is great at just like helping you digest like a lot of research information, and it has a ton of research on the different talent pools you're trying to reach. So ask the AI, like ask ChatGPT, like, okay, this is like, I'm trying to reach senior marketing in the region of Atlanta. Okay, what do they typically do? Where do they begin? Is there any communities that would be interesting to join? Things like that.
When you say that, I just think about all the desk research I used to have to do. Online research would take you ages to do that kind of stuff. So it's at our fingertips now, so we should use it. I mean, there was 28 ideas, so we can't cover them all off, and people can always watch that as well. But one of the things that really stood out, another thing that stood out for me was you saying, do not leave the responsibility of creating the content to the employee. So let's talk a bit about that.
I mean, particularly what I meant in that idea was do not put the responsibility of the content on the people you're trying to support or you're trying to help. And that is especially true when companies are running ESG type of campaigns. So whether that be like, let's say International Women's Day, for example, like the issue that this day and the reason why this day exists is to acknowledge a lack inequality between men and women and to visibly try to change it and make a difference. But then what companies do is then they go and ask women to be, again, the people solving the problem for themselves, when in reality, the content should be about how men in the company are taking responsibility to be proactive and solving these issues.
Yes, yeah, good point.
And then instead, give more power to women by highlighting how great of a job they're doing, how great of a leader they are, how great of technical, like say that like they would be working in product, like highlight how good they are and remove the responsibility for them to go like, this is how we're going to fix it. A lot of companies are then, we have this employee resource group of like women coming together, which is amazing, but then they're like, in the content, they're like, oh, this is how we can help each other and everything like that. And I think this has value somewhere, but what has even more value is to go and ask the group who's responsible to figure out what is it that they're actually doing to solve this problem.
Nice. So, conscious of time, but I think the last thing, so, people who have been watching this, watched your talk yesterday, or listening to this, or were online watching your talk yesterday, what would you want them to do when they maybe have a next meeting or next meeting next month, and you want them to put something in their agenda and go, right, we need to do something? What would that be?
Well, I guess it depends on who is the person actually watching the talk.
True. Fair enough,
if it's someone who has the possibility to say that it would be someone who has access to resources like an agency, or that has a content creation team in-house, I would want them to showcase a couple of the ideas and to go okay, let's try one. I shared this idea of having content duos.
Yes, I like
where
that.
you put two people from different group together, or people from the same group together. So two developers talking technically what they're doing, or a marketing and a salesperson to ask about how they're collaborating, or do they have the same KPIs, things like that. So I would say pick one of the ideas and see if this is something you might be able to implement in your next round of content creation. Obviously, if your team is unable to create content, or is far away, that they still are in the process of convincing the company that they need to create content, I would say that to look at maybe more of the distribution aspect, and to understand what it is that they're going to be using the content for. So then I would start mapping the candidate journey, and I would be okay, on this place, here's the most impactful thing we can do to attract. On the first interview, here's the most impactful thing we can do. So, for example, on the first interview, one of the most impactful thing you can do is, prior to the candidate coming to that very first interview, or even say the hiring manager interview, is to give them a list of resources for them to succeed. Because we always are, sometimes we're in this mindset that we're going to ask questions to the candidate to see whether or not they're successful, whether or not they understand everything, whether or not they've done their research. To me, that's the wrong mindset. For you, especially as a talent acquisition, you want to send candidates to your hiring manager that are qualified and that have done their research.
Yes.
So you're rooting for them.
Yeah, exactly.
So provide them the tool to go and do their research. Provide them with a landing page or a page where they can look at the job and understand the job before they go to the hiring manager, so that the question they do ask to the hiring managers are more relevant questions.
Yeah. And you can have more relevant conversation. And
exactly,
there is this weird pride, I think, from companies where they go, if they're interested in us, they'll find out. They'll find out about it somehow.
No, that's your job to organize the information that you have and make sure they have access to it. Especially as a recruiter, I think root for your candidates. It's going to make your life easier anyway. So give them the tool.
And actually, it's the start of a positive relationship, a healthy relationship, isn't it? But look, I'd love to chat more, but it's been great chat with you. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
And make sure you look at, there's a whole load of content done over the last 2 days. Thank you for Empple and Yandex for supporting this.
Absolutely,
it's been great to chat with everybody. And we will see you later. Belgrade next year, let's do it.
Thank you, everyone.
Cool. Right, that's it.